Hello and welcome back to the KST Healing Hub. I am so excited to have Luigi Castaldo here with us again today. Why again? I roped him into doing this because he has this brilliant interpretation of the sevens in tarot. So we're going to explore that today. But first, for those of you who don't know this most amazing of humans, Luigi, welcome. Can you please
Thank you, and thank
tell
you for
us?
having me again.
Yes. Ooh. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself? How you came to tarot?
So, yeah, my name is Luigi, as you obviously you know, but for the people that are maybe watching and don't know, and I'm Italian of origins, but I live in London, UK, and I came into tarot in spring 2020, just during the pandemic, basically, and I was introduced to it. Obviously, I knew of tarot, I knew what tarot was, I knew it existed, but I never touched it, either by hand or experience. Until my friend exposed me to it in 2020. And it's been one of those once you go in, you never come out, or once you go that way, you never turn back. It's been a real discovery of passion and all, what's the word? Like AWE, like an utter devotion to it, so speaking. So it's been like something that I provided entertainment, learning, and a deep level of um, growth, I suppose. Yeah, like things that change your life in ways that you could never have predicted. Like, if people told you, "Oh, this is what's going to happen," and then you listen and you're just being very skeptical, and you're just like, "Yeah, sure, go on with it, whatever." But then you just experience it and you live through it, and you look back into the past like, "Oh, they were right."
Gosh, that is powerful. It's so true. It's so wonderful to be able to look back and go, it was meant to be. And it is definitely for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and what have you been up to lately? You mentioned a group that you're now doing about podcast in addition to your readings, a teaching and at TMA.
In my daytime life, it's a bit sometimes being in the world of tarot, not for everyone, but for a lot of people, including myself. It's sometimes like being in the realm of DC or Marvel universe. You have this dual identity. You either have like the daytime Clark Kent, and then you have Superman or Peter Parker and Spider-Man, whichever you want to choose. So in my daytime life, I work in mental health and adult social care, which in a way is not necessarily tarot related, but it is in the field of connecting to the community, connecting with people, and offering as much support as possible, which I think tarot does, but via or through other means. And yeah, besides my daytime identity, obviously I have my involvement in the world of tarot as much as possible, any single spare time and second and minute, through Tarot Mysticism Academy, first and foremost, working as a facilitator, as a student support assistant. So that's something that I do for the most part. And then, yeah, I do my community readings sometimes once a month, sometimes more than that, because I'm very lucky to have wide network of magical individuals that are not just involved in tarot, but are also involved in paganism and magic and occultism even. So there's always some events that you can get your foot through the door and get the chance to make new connections and new memories, build new skills, build new confidence. And most recently, myself and some alumni of the beautiful Tarot Mysticism Academy, or as we like to refer to it fondly, TMA, just abbreviation. We got together because we are all based here in Europe, but mostly the UK. So we are on the same time zone. It's quite easy to get in touch. And we just thought, why not just, because we always end up having these um, informal meetings, just discussing ideas and sharing. passions and obsessions, even sometimes, from tarot to folklorism to mythology and other pieces of mind, like how does AI come into play with the spiritual world in this century and whatnot. How does how can you explain the multiple different situations that are taking place on a global scale based on what's going on in the stars and whatnot? So we just thought, why don't we just start recording these conversations and just put them out there in the internet? If anything, it just provides another corner of the web where people with like-minded thoughts or interests or just simple curiosity can just pop in and either learn or have a laugh, at the very least have a laugh. So that's what we've been doing, and it's called the Occultinarium. So yeah, if you fancy it, we just got a few videos in. So far, we've been discussing um, the Sabbaths of the wheel of the pagan wheel of the year, at least the ones that happened since the beginning of 2026, as well as Kabbalah, as well as ghosts, as well as the differences between the Smith deck versus the Thoth deck, and we got plenty more things in the pipeline. So that's been very much it for the time being.
That's amazing. I will have that information at the end of this video as well, and some links in the description. I love that you're doing that. By the way, you touched on the differences in the Rider Waite and Thoth decks, which we're going to explore with the sevens pretty soon. So excited. Um, can you let everyone that's watching know some of the differences between the two and some of the similarities?
Yeah, so absolutely. So obviously, everything that we're going to share and discuss, it's most definitely points of view. You know, I will never sell anything that comes, I use sell as a quote unquote. I will never sell anything that comes out of my mouth or my heart or my mind as the absolute truth. Definitely something that I deeply believe in, but obviously we live in a world that is very complex. Tarot in itself, it's so ancient. And similar to the beauty between, hopefully, I'm not going into a tangent, but the beauty between tarot and paganism is that one, they're both so ancient, and two, they relied so much on oral tradition that there's very little physical evidence. There is physical evidence up to a certain amount period of time, but not before it. So there's only so much that we can take as facts, and therefore, for better or for worse, there's obviously a lot of stipulation and theorizing, which I think is fine. You know, it's part of the intrigue, I think, like the whole, I do wonder, I do wonder. So yeah, I would say if you start comparing the two, Toff versus Myth, you can arguably say that there's some major differences. Like Toff relies more on um, what's the word? Abstract art, shall we say? And obviously, both of them, I would argue, they take a lot of inspirations from even older decks than that, that being the Sforza or the Marseillais and so forth. Like I think both of them, they definitely borrow a lot from those particular decks and some Golden Dawns original decks as well. Um, but yeah, I will observe, not argue, but I will observe that Thoth relies more on sacred geometry, abstract images, the use of colors. At the same time, the Smith does rely on the use of color, but not always in the same way that the Thoth does. And Pamela, Pixie, our beloved, our most powerful sister up there, she definitely channeled a lot of her theatrical experiences and background, you know, being a thespian herself, into the images of the Smith deck. So I think one one major particularity about the two decks is that because of the accessible images and sceneries depicted in the Smith deck, you can see that or you can interpret that as being a more accessible deck for people that may not be familiar with tarot, with occultism, with magic and whatnot. Whether the tough deck, definitely it's something that an individual that doesn't know anything any better, I suppose, can still approach, but most certainly they will experience what's going on here? Whether the Smith deck can give you more of a clearer, I may not know what it means, but I can see what's going on. There's a more direct something's going on here. There's a visual that tells a story. And that being said, once you get to learn Thoth, the story is already there as well, but it might take a bit more mentorship, exploration, learning to get to the story, which is what makes me believe in. There's differences, but ultimately they are rooted in the same seed, in the same DNA code, in the same truth, if you will.
You both came from the Golden Dawn, the
Precisely.
decided, yes. Uh, and so if someone wants to read more superficially, more concretely, Rider Waite is a great example. And the Thoth for, you said the differences. First, where they came to my mind was, yeah, a little more opium. But yeah, you get into Crowley, and if you want to get more spiritual and dig a little deeper, the Thoth, get more
Yeah,
abstract, you said.
yeah. I guess you, if you forgive my metaphor, I feel like sometimes the use of Thoth can become more psychedelic,
Ooh.
and the use of Smith deck can be more. Ah, I want to say regular, but I don't think it's the correct word because I think by saying regular, we are not acknowledging the power that the Smith also possesses. But it's just to say that because of the people behind the creation, so we have Pamela Pixie as well as Arthur Edward Waite in the Smith, which even though they were very eccentric and very knowledgeable and amazing individuals for certain, not that I met them personally, I would say they play more by the rules. They were more observant of the tradition and so forth. On the other side, you have Lady Frida Harris, and you have obviously the mighty Aleister Crowley, but apologies, that has a bit of a fame for being the rebellion individual, the rebellion ceremonial magician, the rebellious ceremonial magicians. So I think there's definitely something to take in consideration, like the energy of the creators. On one side, you have creators that were incredibly unique and have their own set of skills and power, but didn't necessarily rock the boat too much on a societal level. And on the other side, you have in the more bohemian energies, at least of Crowley. I'm pretty sure that Frida was less of gossip column topic, if you will, but still remarkably remarkable woman nonetheless.
Oh, so remarkable indeed. Just to clarify something, you mentioned the word pagan a few times. Uh,
Mhm.
it's my understanding from practice and study that paganism, when you dig deeper, is the same as monotheism, polytheism. It's all ultimately comes down to a universal whole. That paganism
Yeah,
is parts
yeah.
of a whole. Okay, awesome.
It's like an umbrella term for many different sets of beliefs. And you can get more specific, but I think a pagan simply describes um, pathways that are deeply rooted in nature and that maybe precedes, allegedly, like the coming of certain empires, the coming of whether it was the British Empire or the Roman and Ottoman Empire, although paganism was still present there, but it speaks of what's the word I'm looking for? It speaks of either a movement or a spiritual belief, or if you will, a faith that precedes the societal constructs, I suppose, that we get to experience nowadays, and we have been experiencing for several centuries. But yeah, I would consider it more as an umbrella term than a specific movement, I suppose.
Yeah, beautiful. So, this journey, you've described a lot of study, events, work, experience. You've been through so much on this beautiful, beautiful journey of yours. I have this image of you in the with the hills and the villages of Italy, and then coming to the UK with London, in the theater and tarot and this counseling and just and it's being such an amazing teacher. Anyway, the sevens.
Yes.
Crowley did not like the sevens, and the sevens in tarot are
So yeah, in the Thoth deck, because obviously every single people may not all be aware of it, but for those that do not know, every single card has an esoteric title, what we refer to as an esoteric title, and obviously the Golden Dawn has attributed most of those titles to the cards, and they're not obviously visible, even by written word in the Smith deck, but Crowley did include them in his version of the Thoth deck, in his version of the tarot that is the Thoth deck. That is, um, and there may be some differences between what the Golden Dawn attributed versus what Crowley attributed in terms of those titles. So yeah, if we look at the sevens, bearing in mind that they're always all addressed to as the Lord of, whether because of my pagan background and um, mindset and whatnot, I tend to attribute to them the title of the Lady of, just to represent the divine feminine more and elevate the divine feminine more. But ultimately, it's an individual's choice. The Lord or the Lady doesn't really matter. Maybe it does to an extent, but that's a conversation for another time, another space. Um, but yeah, in the case of the sevens of the tarot deck, obviously we're going to focus on Thoth, I suppose, most and foremost, but it can be just as truthful for any other deck. You have the Lady of Valor, which will be the Seven of Wands, and then you have the Lady of Debauch, which would be the Seven of Cups. And then you have the Lady of Futility, which will be the Seven of Swords. And last but not least, the Lady of Failure, which will be the Seven of Discs or Pentacles. And obviously, to all those, you can change the word lady to Lord up to anyone who's listening, up to anyone who's exploring. Um, yeah, so those will be the four esoteric titles of the four sevens of the minor arcana.
Well, valor, futility, debauch. And you've been able to, especially through the divine feminine, um, redefine those and see the positives. So it's like two sides of the same coin, the negative and the positive. It's the same. So, what is the balance aspect of the sevens as you, or the negative as Crowley saw it, and why? And why do you see it as positive?
So I think so. My journey with it was I guess because being the way that I am, and that being pagan, also being a queer person, and always looking for advocacy and whatnot, I kept seeing, especially in occasions where I was with clients, or even in occasions where the sevens were being explored or talked about or taught as well. And this constant, if I can say it, mud being thrown on top of the poor sevens. And it's tricky to sit with it, especially when you consider how powerful the number seven is, and all the references that we have around the number seven being a very transformative alchemical number. We have so many references: the seven dwarves, the seven colors of the rainbow, 7 days of the week, the seven luminary classical planets of the solar system, and so forth, the seven stages of alchemy, and the seven principles of Hermeticism. You take it, and there will be one more. Um, there was something in my heart that kept telling me, like, it cannot just be this what I was introduced to, like, the specifically the futility and specifically the failure of the Lady of Failure and the Lady of Futility from the Seven of Swords and the Seven of Discs. And so I kept having meditations and periods of time where I was reflecting and journaling, connecting to my higher self and to my spirit guides, particularly my sacred guardian. And messages kept coming through, images kept coming through. And slowly but steadily, more words were revealed. And I guess because, tarot obviously is something very well established, but just because something is well established, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't play with it, experiment with it to your own um, satisfaction of curiosity and whatnot. And so I thought, well, if I cannot accept the Lady of Futility, if I cannot accept the Lady of Perseverance, how about I try and find out a new name? And were the intentions behind those meditations. And through the Lady of Debauch for the Seven of Cups, I'm touching the Seven of Cups and the Seven of Swords and the Seven of Pentacles or discs, because as you may notice, in the Seven of Wands, there is the word valor. And that is probably because even though it's a seven, being a seven of the element of fire, very much the element of the masculine, and therefore very close to Crowley's heart, he didn't give the Seven of Wands the amount of not complexity, but the questionable titles, I suppose, that we find in debauch, futility, and failure. So as long as it's fire, as long as it's masculine, everything is good, business as usual, everyone. Calm down, put the pens down. But then we enter other elements, other kingdoms, other realms, like we enter the water and the earth, debauch and failure, being feminine. And then even in air, despite being a very powerful element, specifically in ceremonial magic, we get the word futility. And so that's where, through the guidance of the spirit guides and my sacred guardian, came this idea that, or this revelation for me at least, that the Seven of Cups would be better suited to the word or the title, Lady of Desire. The Seven of Swords for me became the Lady of Knowledge, and the Seven of Discs or Pentacles became the Lady of Perseverance. Um, and there are people out there that may argue that all that I'm doing is simply trying to turn everything into a positive realm of unicorns, but that's not necessarily the way that I experience it. It's not necessarily, everything needs to be beautiful, everything needs to be amazing, but it's just worth asking. Let's observe where all the positivity in the already established tarot system is, and where it's not. And we notice that where it's not is within the sevens and the fives, most and foremost. And then it becomes like a question of, is there some level of partiality to it? You know, because especially in my belief system and in my learning and in my reflection, I do believe that everything is light and shadow. There's a positive and a negative aspect in everything, and negative not being as evil, positive not being necessarily as good, but simply as the forces that govern life and the universe, the forces that govern by extension the tree of life that we're both very fond of. Where negative, it's simply a recipient energy, and positive is more of a giving energy. And that's one or two ways to look at it without judgment. Um, and I guess in my attempt to change the titles, it was also an attempt to make it being the tarot and the seven specifically, more accessible to one, clients, and two, to future tarot practitioners, learners, luminaries, students. Because obviously I kept witnessing this amount of anxiety whenever a seven was approached with those given titles. Yeah, does that make sense so far?
And that's how it came up for us, right? Because my uh,
Mm,
birthday landed on sevens. And so
yes.
that's the card of failure. And for you, you transformed it into the Lady of Perseverance. Now, as much as I love the image of rainbows and unicorns, perseverance still means challenge, but it gives hope. And from what you said,
Yeah.
it sounds like it was more about, I'd say, distaste or something of the feminine, of negative polarity, even if you want to take gender out of it. Uh,
Mm.
was that something that maybe Crowley had an issue with?
Yeah, so when you it, so the thing about the seven, despite being this magical number that we talked about just a while ago, with all those associations, obviously we know that tarot overall, but specifically now we're talking about the Thoth deck, has its roots, or it's not that one comes first and the other one comes second, but tarot and the tree of life, they come hand in hand. Specifically with the Thoth deck, I would say, like Crowley being a child of the Golden Dawn, obviously a lot of the Golden Dawn traditions and magical rituals, including Kabbalah and the tree of life, as well as astrology, as well as alchemy, as well as masonry and so forth, will influence the formula of the deck. And I mentioned that because the seven in the Hermetic Kabbalah, which is the Kabbalah of the Western world, the Kabbalah of the Golden Dawn specifically, is ruled astrologically by Venus. So you have there, again, an image of the divine feminine. Beyond the fact that it's Venus, the, the place of the divine feminine, it's also in position-wise, geography-wise, below the six, below the heart of the tree, below the last um, what's the last ideal realm, if I can choose that as the right word. I don't know if it's the right word, but we'll see. But basically, because the six is the harmony, the heart of the heart center, the heart chakra, the source of beauty, the source of life to an extent, then if you follow the numerology ladder from the term of manifestation, so from 1 to 10, after the six, you have to change into the seven. So I think a lot of creators and a lot of authorities in their own right, they obviously take this transition, which could be possibly very traumatic when you think about it. Imagine living an ideal world that is the world of Tiferet, the heart of the tree of life, the number six, the sixes, and then change into something different. And you wonder, like, but wasn't I in an amazing place before? What's this? What's this? Imagine the shock factor there. And I think some people took that under a magnifying glass and kind of blew it, not out of proportion, but for better or for worse, that there is an element of uh, no, bad, Venus, oh no, no more in the sixes, can't be good. Um, so there's a lot to consider here. There is a tradition and a legacy of a system that is obviously very rich, very detailed, very complex at times, very beautiful, but also very much part of a patriarchal society and a patriarchal world, I suppose. So that's something to take in consideration. And then obviously you have the departure from the realm of the sixes to the realm of the seven, a geographically speaking lower realm, in terms also of light, the light of the divine contains even less light than before. So the lights, when I say light, I mean the essence, the emanation of the divine being reduced even further more than it was before, and therefore becoming more, not necessarily fully material, but partially material, partially less ethereal. So that's a whole lot of elements to consider in regards to the seven, like what happens to the individual. So if we take the discs suit, for example, you experience the Lady of Success in the Six of Pentacles or discs. So I guess after you experience success in a way or another, psychologically speaking, everything else might be experienced or conceived by the individual as failure because they went through success, they had a taste of it, they absorbed it, and therefore everything else can be nothing else but um, non-success, the opposite of success being failure. So I think that's a way that they put the translation or the definition of that title. What happens when you leave behind the realm of the six, the realm of success in Earth, the discs, the pentacles, and you enter the seven energy. But that's again all about reframing and all about pondering on the meaning beyond the meaning, if you will. And I think that's why, like, if you experience success, everything beyond it doesn't have to be failure, but it can be an invitation for perseverance, so that you can continue through the journey, no matter if you want to achieve something specifically, or it's not even about achieving anything. It's simply about continuation and change and rebirth, in a way, if you will. And that's why I guess, like, if we bring out the tree of life again, the Sephira, the sphere of the number seven, Netzach, which can be translated as victory, but also sometimes translated as eternity. And that's a term that I prefer more. Eternity, like because of this magic of the number seven, this alchemical power of the number seven. So there's mystery, I suppose. You can argue that there's mystery all across the tree, all across the numbers, all across the elements, but you can pick um, the fine threads contained in the number seven, and you can breathe in the mystery in the number seven, and therefore it gives us an opportunity to reflect on how perseverance can be more beneficial to an individual, no matter what background they're from, versus the conceptualization of the word failure. How can knowledge give an individual more access to the future, more access to the alchemical journey than the word futility? And again, the word futility probably came from the idea that once you experience science or enlightenment, as I like to call the Six of Swords, everything else is futile. It's this idea that once you have left the realm of idealism, no matter how great it is, there's a loss. There's maybe even a disdain, can we say? Not necessarily the word that I would use in my experience, excuse me, but a word that I'm using to understand the process, understand the mechanics of those associations, those baptisms of esoteric titles within the sevens.
Yes. Oh, and you mentioned Netzach. Some other definitions associated with it include endurance, include victory. So those go
Yeah,
exactly with what you're saying. And Venus, it occurred to me when you were talking about Venus, um, so also associated with five astronomically, uh, creates the pentacle in its orbit every 8 years. So,
yes.
and non-Ptolemaic numbers were tend to be this difficult to work with
Mm.
with our mathematics. So maybe that could be a reason. Oh, I'm so inspired. Okay, Luigi, could you take us through each element and what would you say like when I came to you with am I destined to fail? Because like, is it? Am I destined to fail? And you were like, no, and you pulled me out. Could we go through each one as though someone came to you and said, "What do I do?"
Yeah, almost. Like I said, it's worth considering in the Seven of Discs, the Lady of Failure for Crowley, the Lady of Perseverance for me. It's worth considering that, again, like we said, we are in the number seven ruled by Venus, and Venus is the natural ruler of Taurus, and the Seven of Discs or Pentacles is a decan of Taurus. So there's already some harmony there. There's already some astrological, if not even natural, harmony there. Um, Beyond that, we have the decan being ruled specifically by Saturn. So I think that's also another component to the formula of the Lady of Failure in the Thoth system, because Saturn tends to restrict, tends to delay, tends to place boundaries and edges and so forth. It has to do with time and etc. So I guess when you combine the fact that you have the divine feminine, you left the realm of idealism, and you have the influence of Saturn, probably that's three ingredients that lead to this thick piece of cube of ice, I suppose. But in my view and in my reflection, in a way, Saturn, especially considering the tree of life, it's not, in astrology, it's fairly called, for good reasons or not so good reasons, it's fairly called the greater malefic. But we can also discuss or consider how even traditional astrology or astrology full stop has the tendency to work with black and white without necessarily leaving always the space for nuance or complexity, which I think is important to give space to with the Tree of Life and with Tarot. It's never necessarily a black and white, a yes or no. It's more like how about. Um, and so I say that because if you look at the geography of the Tree of Life, sitting opposite, it would be Binah from Netzach, on the opposite side of the pillar, on the opposite. Um, my terminology will not be great, but if I have the tree in front of me, and I know that I'm working with a screen, so maybe the reflection is inverted, but say that I have Netzach down here, diagonally opposite, I have Binah up here, which Bina is ruled by Saturn. That's why I mention it. So it's interesting to have these two being a somewhat distant reflection of the other, you know, and both of them representing aspects of the divine feminine, but equally both of them teaching something, not punishing, not diminishing, but offering a new opportunity of growth and development and transformation and change throughout the journey of the practitioner, of the initiate, and whatnot. Um, so yeah, because of the because of the reflection position-wise between Netzach and Binah, between Venus and between Saturn, and Saturn therefore being, I'm going to use the metaphor cousin. Let's call Saturn maybe a cousin of Venus, Binah a cousin of Netzach, position-wise. It's not necessarily the right metaphor to use, but it's just to depict an image of energies that are there to teach the individual something throughout the chapter of the Seven of Discs. So if everything was peachy and easily accessible and easily achieved, even perhaps in the Six of Discs or Pentacles, in the realm of success of the Six of Discs and Pentacles, now things are changing, developing, and new skills are required, and maybe the victory from before. When I say victory, I mean the achievement of the Six of Discs has gotten maybe to our ego and maybe a bit to our head and said, from now on, I'm never going to have any delay whatsoever. From now on, I'm never going to have a problem or an issue. But it's not about problems, it's not about issue, it's about pacing because Saturn is and will always be the great teacher. It's mostly about learning, it's mostly about comprehension and apprehension. Because somebody may be listening, and do you understand what I'm saying? I heard what you're saying. I don't know if I understand what you're saying. And that's, I think, it's one of the biggest principles of Saturn. Like, I will not be able to open any doors for you until you understand. And I cannot control when you will understand. You will. So that's the collaboration. Saturn will continue to teach, and the student will have to learn. And so that I think that's what's happening in the Seven of Discs. That's what brought the revelation of perseverance. It's not a stop, go back, never look back, um, give up, give in. It's mostly a whatever wall you believe is in front of you, there's a door that you cannot see. It's magic, it's a transcension and whatnot. Like you're presented with a, for lack of better words, maybe block, maybe delay, but what it is, it has the hidden shape of a door, of an entrance, of a path. And I think that's what's happening there. Especially when you mention, the stellium of Venus creating the pentagram as well, like something that you can only see when you look at the sum of all things from afar. And I think that's what one needs to do, specifically in the Seven of Discs, but ideally in any seven. Look at this, the sum of all things and consider the meaning beyond the meaning. And that's something that may take us further away in our journey, no matter where we are, no matter our background and whatnot. So that will be for the discs. For the swords, we
Swords.
have the Lady of, yeah, the Lady of Futility. But to me, came from the meditation, the Lady of Knowledge. And that's because, again, everything goes back to the idea of what is the formula. So we got Venus again, number 7. And then we have the decan luminary that rules the decan, that being the moon. The moon rules the Seven of Swords. And then the Seven of Swords being a decan of Aquarius. When you translate that into major arcana terms, you are presented with the image of the Empress, um, the High Priestess, who I affectionately call the Aradia, and the Star card. When you arrange those images, you get the image of the Maiden, the Mother, and the Crone, which is quite important in my pathway. It's quite important in the tradition that I'm part of. It's which basically simply represents the different stages of life, birth, life and death, and therefore rebirth, life and death, and it goes on and on and around and around. So they're mighty powerful and they're mighty beautiful. But when you have those three energies, when you have those three archetypes, am I to accept, not just me, is anyone to accept futility? We can see futility as in the term that follows the sixth title, which is science, or in my, again, meditation journey, enlightenment. So maybe again, futility, because again, anything that you experienced in the six can only be seen as a lesser experience within the seven. So maybe that's partially where the futility came from in the title association. But when you get those three majors, when you get those three archetypes, how do you accept the word futility? It doesn't apply any longer. And that's where the word knowledge came from. The knowledge of the divine feminine, the knowledge of the empress, the knowledge of the star card. And boy, does the star card have knowledge to spread, knowledge to share, knowledge to teach. And then you obviously have the priestess or the Aradia, as I call her. So again, giving us this idea that knowledge, obviously, we know that knowledge is power, knowledge is truth, and not all of us are always ready for the truth. And I speak for myself personally, like I keep searching for truth, I keep demanding truth. And sometimes I'm presented with terrible truth, even in my day job, like the truth that no matter how many efforts you put in, you cannot help an individual that needs help unless they somewhat help themselves a little bit. And that's a principle that I'm not going to discuss here because I'm not going to believe that I'll find a resolution for that here, but my seniors and in my work, it came up a lot. Like this constant need in my job that we need to help people, we need to help the world and whatnot. And then the lack of resources versus the agency of the individual, the free will of the individual, very complex conversations. But that's to say, the complexity of the term knowledge, every knowledge will bring unpredictable and perhaps even unstoppable amounts of change. And maybe that's part of the futility. Like a lot of us seek the meaning of life. Eh, Is there meaning to our life? And we all want to believe that there is. And I firmly believe that there is. But what if the truth is that it's not? That it's just pure chaos. Pure chaos, and everything is a game of chance. So isn't that an aspect of the word futility? But if I take that energy or that concept through the word knowledge, he invites me and hopefully invites anyone to draw their own conclusion. Because a lot of times, for very justifiable reasons, we keep demanding and we keep needing and we keep believing that we are in need of the external. Like I'm not going to get anywhere without someone or something or somewhere. There must be a missing component, which is a very much an ingredient of the six when you think about it. So if you take now the Smith deck, for instance, every single individual is like there's somebody higher than them, behind them, supporting them. And that is an indication of the higher self presence in the number six, supporting us any day, every time. And now that we're in the seven, is that energy still there? I mean, that's something to explore, wonder about, query about. Who knows? But if you go through the principle of what was before will never be what is after, and vice versa, maybe that support is no longer there, but not again as a punishment, but as in the sixth realm, I taught you everything you need to know. I elevated you as much as I possibly could with my powers. Now in the seven, again, the number of alchemy, the number of transformation, I am now standing in the crowd, in the rows of the theater, and I'm watching your show now. I'm watching you perform your lines. What will you what show, what story will you tell me in the sevens? So maybe that's another aspect to consider in this whole equation. Um, yeah. So I think that's the journey that I went on in the Seven of Swords. Lady of Utility for Crowley, Lady of Knowledge for myself. And I hope that every individual gets the opportunity to access their own knowledge in their own time.
Yes. I think this is going to be so helpful for people to come across or identify with these cards in their birth charts. It's huge.
I hope so.
So now I'm
We have the
the
Seven of Cups
Seven
and
of
the Seven
Cups.
of Wands. Seven of
Yes.
Cups, yes. Obviously, debauch. I believe the term came around because obviously debauch has some sexual connotation attached to it as a word. I'm not an Oxford dictionary, but there's the essence, some of the essence of the word, and it makes sense because obviously in the Seven of Swords this time you have a decan of Scorpio. So we had Taurus, we had Aquarius, now we had the next fixed sign of the zodiac being Scorpio, and Scorpio is somewhat of a sexual sign, if you will. So again, and the seven being Venus, but now the decan itself being also ruled by Venus. So there's a heavy Venusian influence in the Seven of Cups, and obviously being the element of water, divine feminine, and whatnot. So you can see in the image of the Thoth deck that Crowley did not necessarily appreciate it as much, and saw it as again, lesser than or a corrupted energy or whatnot. But again, Scorpio, their mantra is desire, and in the system of the Tree of Life, this might be too complex for people that are not familiar with the Tree of Life to comprehend. But basically, each sphere, each Sephiroth, is connected to each other by a pathway, and the pathway that connects the six and the seven is the path of Scorpio, is the path of Noon, the fish, and is the path of the Death card. So there is something really beautiful to consider, especially when we bring forward the Seven of Cups with all the Scorpion presence, and association. So I think when in my meditation, the mantra Scorpio stood out, kept chanting in my head and in my heart, desire, desire, desire. Because in the six we experience from Crowley's tradition, the Lady of Pleasure, and maybe the pleasure was, um, for lack of better words, heavenly in the Six of Cups. But now again, transitioning to the seven, it was lesser than, and so it was no longer pleasure, but it was debauch. It was pure um, carnal. It was pure satisfaction of the flesh and what have you. I'm not quoting this word by word, but I'm using it as based on my reflections and based on my learning from my tutors and mentors and whatnot. Um, but I view it more as, again, the realm of mystery. And when you're now asked to really ponder, because the cups and the water, by extension, is the element of the heart, so speaking, the element closer to the heart, in my view, in my experience. So you're then asked to really look into the heart, into the depth of the oceans, and see what truth, and by extension, what knowledge, reference to the Seven of Swords, lies deep within there, deep below there. Um, so yeah, it's that quest for, you may desire, and we desire several different things, but what is the truthful desire? What is the, if you're familiar with the never-ending story, in a way, it completely represents the journey between Tiferet to Netzach, and the path of Nun, in a way, because the whole second part of the book, where Bastian enters Fantasia and starts exploring the realm of fantasy, etc. He has to go through so many wishes and so many desires, and each of them change the world around him, and it changes him out and inwardly as well. So I think excuse me, I think that's what came through in the Seven of Cups, and the Lady of Desires versus the Lady of Debauch. Again, being very truthful to the essence of Scorpio, um, and being willing to not just necessarily fulfill, not just necessarily realize, but being willing to embrace, being willing to acknowledge the desire. If I can take the Seven of Cups from Thoth to Smith, you have the visual of clouds and dreams and shadows. And again, I think that's part of the realm of Netzach. That's part of I'm going to give you almost like a test. I'm going to give you everything that you can possibly dream of in the Seven of Cups. And they're probably things that you dreamed of several times when you were little, when you grew up. But are you able to, the only way to get through the mist, the only way able to get through or find the door is for you to hold on to the cup that truly represents your deepest and most truthful desire. So it's a quest for truth, I suppose, similar as it was for the perseverance that you need to showcase in realizing yourself in the realm of the discs, similar as the acknowledgement of the knowledge in the Seven of Swords. So that's my input, I would say, in the Seven of Cups.
Amazing. Yes. Yes. And you mentioned wanting to see progress with some of the people that you work with and the lack of funding, amidst all that. And it is difficult to see. You have to see it in smaller increments in different ways. And
Mm,
but with tarot, with you describing these sevens, reinterpreting them for their deeper mysteries, I
mm.
hope you'll be able to see greater shifts in people and people's perspectives and in their healing process. Both are incredibly valuable and beautiful ways to work to help heal the world. But it is
Absolutely.
nurturing to be able to see people benefit as well. So, which brings us to the Seven of Wands,
The Seven of Wands. It's almost
which
like a different conversation to all the other sevens when you think about it, specifically in the Thoth tradition, because now you have Valor, and even in the image, it really strikes you as, oh, there's a party going on here, versus the Seven of Cups, the Seven of Swords, the Seven of Discs. You feel like, oh, have I been kicked out of the part from the party? But in the Seven of Wands, there's definitely a different conversation. And again, I think most of it is down to the element of fire and the suit of the wands being the sacred and divine masculine, that the wands and the fire being very close to Crowley and his Leo ascending. Um, so yeah, there's probably a lot of love and affection that has been transferred into the Seven of Wands that wasn't necessarily transferred into the other sevens. But again, Valor, I think it reflects the conversations that you and I had so far, like this idea that now, again, beyond the realm of the harmony and the beauty of the sixes, now you get a chance to display your own valor, bringing us back to that little reflection that we had before. I believe that the higher self never leaves us. I believe that the higher self is always there. I want to make that completely clear. But if we entertain for a moment the part of the transformative journey, part of the alchemical journey is that you do things with Obi-Wan Kenobi, like Luke Skywalker has to go through a period of training with the sacred master, whether it's Obi-Wan or whether it's Yoda, but eventually has to face um, the dark side of the Force and or the Emperor or Vader or whatnot, but independently, by themselves. They have to display their learning, their craft, their gifts independently. And they do that maybe in the realm of the seven, because it's the one that succeeds the realm of the six. Or even if we take it the other way around, it's the one that succeeds the sevens and precedes the eights, which are also in the tree of life, places of learning. So it's interesting to have like it's not sixes may not be learning necessarily, maybe like harmony again and balance and understanding the mysteries of the universe and whatnot. But in the eight, there is more specific um, correspondence to the craft of learning. And we have the seven in between. So I guess the seven is the stage. I guess the seven is in the eight and or the six, we either draft the script and we learn the script and we think of the script. But in the seven, that's where either the rehearsal or the live performance, press night takes place. So I think again, in the seven, if we believe that the higher self takes a step back and says, "Go on, I'm with you, but go on," and then the realm of fire being the closest realm to emanation versus the earth being the furthest away. Again, it's this idea that you're still very close, emanationally speaking, you're still very close to the divine realm. That here you're purely asked to display valor and to discover even valor, to embrace and to touch and to wear valor. But obviously, in the Seven of Wands, beyond the preference of the element of fire, excuse me, of Crowley, there's also to consider the mystery of not the mystery so much, but I'm fascinated with the Seven of Wands because if we analyze the Seven of Wands, we have the seven again, our lovely Venus, we have a Deacon of Leo, the last or the Strength card, and we have the rulership of Mars, our beloved Tower, and each one of them they represent the three paths that connect the tree, that hold the tree together. So there is definitely if the tarot they're all known as keys, are they, or mirrors? But if they're all keys, the Seven of Wands is a very unique key. The Seven of Wands is definitely a key made of some sacred substance, maybe not even in the periodic table. Maybe it's some metal or precious gem from another galaxy. Who knows? Because it's interesting to have that formula or that image rather hidden, not so much hidden once you look at it, and or reflected in the Lady of Valor, in the Seven of Wands. There's a deep mystery there. And I say mystery only because we can talk about it, we can reflect on it, and there may be people that have more answers and more specific and clearer answers than the ones that I'm able to provide. But there is things that take me on a journey whenever the Seven of Wands come around. There's voices and choirs, there's choruses of ancient noise, ancient music that says there's something more going on here. And maybe Crowley picked on it itself, and maybe that's why, beyond the preference of the element of fire, he what's the word I'm looking for? He courted the Seven of Wands more than the other seven. Who's to say? Who's to know? If we do a seance, we can ask him. But yeah, so I think there's been very similar journeys to the Seven of Wands as there have been, and there can be in the Seven of Cups, swords and discs or pentacles, but there's clearly a advantage point in the Seven of Wands. And it could also have to do as well with the elemental dignity in itself. Like in Hermetic system, the sevens are ruled by fire, and the Seven of Wands being fire. So maybe there's a bit of a component in the formula itself. But there's a lot to consider, as you can see. And I think that's the most beautiful part of it. There is so many different considerations and points of view. Um, my aim and my agenda, if you want to call it that way, it's simply for an individual to view the seven as much of an opportunity as they can view when they see a six, as they view as they can when they view an ace, or a 10, who knows? It's just to break down stigma. I think stigma is very dangerous on any aspect of life and can be extremely dangerous. Maybe, I don't know if dangerous is going to be the right term, but I'm going to go with it. It can be extremely dangerous in the field of tarot, esotericism, magic, divination. Because again, I never want an individual in my care, and by care I mean in a consultation with me, to go away feeling like, oh, I have been given the evil eye, or I have been shown that there's no future for me. I have been shown that I have no ways to rise above the challenge, or rise above anything, anywhere, at any given time. And I think of the opposite of it. And I think I stand by one of the many meanings of tarot being the map to how open every door, because every door needs a key, and tarot is the key. And I stand by that.
That's a perfect analogy. It is a key. And it seems like you've helped bring some light and healing to a lot of the incredible interpretations that these two tarot decks bring. Um, yeah. So I think with that understanding, that blend, people can feel good about whatever deacon they land on. So the sevens are, as you mentioned, they're all in the fixed signs of the elements. So Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius,
And
Taurus,
Leo.
Leo. And it's the third deacon. It's the last deacon in those signs.
Yeah,
And I love what you said about, six going into seven, where could that also be an element? It reminds me in the Tree of Life of um, the 10th to the first, right?
hmm
Where the end is wedged in the beginning, as is said in the Sefer Yetzirah. So, um,
exactly.
mhm, yeah. So it's a smaller version of it in Zaranfin. So it's, yeah, perfect.
Exactly. I
And
think it's worth sitting with it a little bit to allow anyone to understand. Because I think one of the major obstacles that we face is that we live in a world where we're either taught or we're shown that something is always going to be, but the grass is always greener. Like we may look at a situation with deep envy and deep dissatisfaction, and rather than showcase and level of appreciation for whatever beauty that is around us, maybe the first thought that comes to mind is, why not me? Why is it not mine? Um, and I think. it's not something that I can personally change or anybody can personally change, or rather, it is something that we can each do our own part to change, but it doesn't get changed in a day. It might take a millennia. And but what you mentioned, the deep secret between the 10 and 1, which is probably wearing a guise of some kind between the 7 and the 6, um, it helps us understand that everything is an infinite giving and receiving journey, dance, rhythm, and there is in as much riches, as many riches in the sevens that there are in the sixes, or whatever other number we want to consider. And hopefully one day, when people speak of the sevens, and specifically the seven of swords and the seven of discs and the seven of cups, they may approach these sevens in a reading with individuals from a more compassionate place than the stigmatized way. And no judgment in either way. Far from me. Who am I to place a judgment on anyone? But for me, I will try and do my part in shifting the stigma if possible. Because I think that's what, in talking about the higher self, that's what my higher self is demanding of me. And so I'll live up to it as much as possible, as much as I can. But yeah, to each their own. Live your own truth, everyone. Live your own life. That's my blessing.
Oh, that's a beautiful way to start to close. I I'm so sorry too. I thought this will take 20 minutes, half an hour.
He never does. He never does when talking about tarot.
There's so much. And yeah, you bring so much to this specific topic and the topic overall. And I know,
Thank you.
oh my gosh, yes. And everyone you touch, even if you can't see a shift, a seed is planted and it's just as profound, um, whether you can see the shift now or not, if you're using tarot or clinical, if you're on the street saying hello or with a client. Thank you for all you do. And thank you for helping me work through the seven of discs so much.
I know it was such a beautiful experience, being able to allow you to see or see the light in your eyes once you could see the way forward with the seven of discs. That was and that's one of the moments that whenever I think about, it brings me a lot of joy,
Oh,
and it reminds me of why it's important for me to try and do what I do. Again, the breaking down of the stigma. That's exactly the outcome that I'm questing for.
beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Luigi, for your time. I know it's very limited. So I will.
No, thank you. Thank you deeply. From the bottom of the heart, thank you for giving me the space to be here and enjoy your company and share the little few insights that I can share.
Thank you. And oh, I'll have your information at the end, but where can people find you?
Instagram. I know they were supposed to have a YouTube presence and a TikTok presence nowadays, but I really struggle with a lot of aspects of social media. But if anyone wants to go on Instagram, I can be found under at Luigi the Witch. Um, no numbers needed, no capital letters needed. So I'm mostly there doing my own thing in my own time. But hopefully we'll expand to more things in the future. And if we do, I'll let you know. But yeah, Instagram is the best place to find me right now.
And can people book a session through Instagram?
Yeah, yeah, they can definitely inquire. Like I'm open for, my DMs are open for consultations, whether they are to receive a reading, to attend a gig, so long as it's a reachable distance. And and whether it's about learning tarot either. All things are things that I enjoy doing. So yeah, the more the merrier. You're all welcome to come around and have a magical time if I can offer you such a magical time.
And there's the YouTube.
We
Yes.
had our podcast called the Occultinarium. We release an episode every Thursday and twice a month on Monday. Two colleagues of mine, Amelie and Lynn, they release episodes that is called The Corner of Chaos, where they speak of very spicy topics and very stimulating topics as well. So it's just four individuals from very different backgrounds coming together and unleashing. Sometimes utter chaos, other times jolly good laughs, and other times truth bombs of some level or another. So there's anything that you may want to wish to explore or require. There's a chance that we might have a bit of it in the occultinarium.
Forward to checking it out. All right. Every blessing. Forward to check.